Update, my beautiful classmate, who looked down on me for dropping out of high school, told me one day, my husband is a Harvard grad and a department head, not like you. So I responded, well, he's unemployed starting tomorrow. Part-3. The entertainment part started, and there were performances by a magician and comedians summarizing a company's history in a skit, filling the room with a festive atmosphere. As the entertainment ended, the host led the applause and continued with the ceremony. Next, we'll have a speech from the president and CEO, Mr. Young, the host announced. Upon hearing those words, I began to walk slowly. As I stood on the stage, I looked over the gathered crowd, expressing my gratitude while everyone listened intently. Only two people were the exception, Sarah and Brandon. They were staring at me, mouths agape in shock. Even from the stage, I could see their lips moving. Why? Why is he speaking? It can't be true. He's the president? I haven't heard anything about this. I imagine that's what they were muttering. I continued speaking. Normally, we would now proceed to the ceremony for awarding outstanding employees. However, before that, I have an announcement to make. One of the awardees, the director who was assigned to our overseas branch, Brandon, will be dismissed from his position effective today. The room was enveloped in silence in an instant. As I tried to continue with a smile, the host approached me. What is your reasoning for this? The host asked, appearing confused. It was then that Sarah suddenly stood up and shouted, that's a lie. Everyone, this man was just a classmate from my middle school. He's just a mere factory worker. Why is he standing there? Yeah, this must be some kind of prank, but this taste in entertainment is terrible, right, everyone? With her shrill voice, Sarah spat out these words, and next to her, Brandon grinned smugly, looking back and forth between me and Sarah, bursting into a brazen laugh. The guests in the room started murmuring, enveloped in a tense atmosphere. I continued speaking calmly. Sarah just mentioned earlier that working in a factory is a lowly job. She also told me not to talk to her anymore, fearing that my lowness would rub off on her. So what? Sarah glared back at me, hands on her hips, still refusing to admit any wrongdoing. I work for this company. I cannot continue working with someone who is ashamed of our work. But my husband is an elite director, completely different from you. End this charade now, she demanded. At that moment, the executive director, Ethan, rushed to the award seat, his face flushed with anger, and started yelling at Brandon. Hey, apologize to Mr. Young right now. However, Sarah and Brandon, still half smiling, refused to believe Ethan's words. What's wrong, Ethan? Why should we apologize to some factory worker? He's just a lowly, incompetent worker. He's just trying to scare us by lying about firing my husband, Brandon scoffed. But Ethan shouted back, his voice trembling, state the name of our company. Young High-Tech Corporation, Brandon muttered. But Young. As he repeated the name, Brandon suddenly realized, and his face turned pale. His name. David Young. Could it be? He's really our company's president? At Brandon's words, Sarah froze in shock. During this time, I had been watching them, and judging that they finally understood, I spoke again. It seems you finally believe me, Brandon. His face ashen, he was shaking all over, hardly able to stand from his chair. In fact, I continued, Annie is the daughter of a major manufacturer that produces some of the leading semiconductor devices in the country. The company that accepted me, a middle school graduate, was one of her parents' factories. At that time, it was still a mid-sized company taking on various machinery productions. But 30 years ago, it developed its first proprietary product, a microcrater meter, and has since expanded its business with the advancement of electronic device technology. Now, alongside semiconductor manufacturing, we're collaborating with foreign companies to develop even more precise testing systems. Combining the knowledge I gained in college with a practical perspective, I actively participated in product development after graduating, resulting in several hit products. Thanks to this, I was transferred to the headquarters, promoted to Director of Electronic Hardware Development, and that's where I met Annie. Even after our marriage, Annie's family never spoke of my past, attending a night high school. Instead, they warmly accepted me as a diligent and enthusiastic young man, rare in this era. Wanting to repay this family and the company that raised me, I devoted myself to my work without distraction. Then, 2 years ago, when Annie's father retired, I took over as the president. Understanding the truth, Brandon looked like he was about to collapse. Ethan addressed him even more desperately, you were overseas, so you might not have known directly, but at least check the information about the company you work for. Brandon, his face still pale, tried to stammer an excuse, but Ethan, his face red with anger, kept yelling, you're so caught up in being an elite from Harvard University that you don't even know the face of our president. I'm ashamed that I recommended someone like you as an outstanding employee. Ethan then grabbed Brandon by the scruff of his neck and dragged him in front of me. Ethan forcefully bowed Brandon's head and then joined him in kneeling down. I deeply apologize for the disrespectful behavior of my subordinate. Please forgive us. I'm so sorry for my ignorance. It's inexcusable. Brandon finally knelt down of his own accord, his face turning bright red as sweat dripped onto the floor. Annie, who had been watching this unfold, turned to me with a question. This was a plan Annie had come up with, I thought. David, what will you do now? You've revealed the truth in front of everyone to avoid being accused of unilaterally firing an employee, she asked. Yeah, well, he's fired, I responded. Someone who insults a person they've just met like that definitely doesn't fit in with our company. As I said this, Brandon fell silent, his forehead dripping with sweat.